Hello readers, I'm the avid reader and today we're reviewing A Conflict of Visions, Ideological Origins of Political Struggles, written by Thomas Sowell in 1987. So this is his 2007 revised edition, but it was originally written in 1987. And this book is quite different from his other books. So his other books usually deal with economics and economic fallacies, what I've read so far. So I've read 3 of his books previously. But this one is much more about ideologies and philosophy and ideas. And he's very objective here. In the previous books, he analyzes stuff to bring up a hypothesis on his different opinions. Here, he lays out the opinions on both sides and he doesn't really pick a side. I think both sides of this political spectrum could read this book without a problem. So it's in 2 parts. He first has the first part, patterns, and then he has the second part, applications. And there are 9 chapters, and he first starts out by explaining the importance of visions. The thing with visions is everything we believe pretty much is based on a vision. And to form a hypothesis or an assumption, we usually have some underlying beliefs. And people are usually divided straight down the middle on their positions, even if they're not at all connected, because they have the same vision which influences their opinions on different subjects to align on one side. And the 2 types of visions discussed here are a constrained and unconstrained vision. And Thomas Sowell points out that not all ideologies fall within this spectrum, but a lot of them do. And it's not always 100% constrained or 100% unconstrained. It's usually a spectrum. If one is part of a constrained or unconstrained vision is whether the thing we believe intrinsically are aligned with constrained or unconstrained visions. So the constrained visions believes that human nature is limited. You cannot reason out everything, so you cannot really control society. While the unconstrained vision believes since you can rationally discuss everything, then you can kind of control society. And the consequences of this, of course, is that those with the constrained vision have a tendency to be on the right, conservatives, libertarians, while those with the unconstrained visions tend to be on the left, so socialists, American liberals. But you do not have to be on the left to be part of the unconstrained vision or on the right to be part of the constrained vision. You can be someone who believes in minimal government and have an unconstrained vision. It's more about how we see the responsibility and nature of humans. So the constrained vision also believes in trade-offs. So when you try to find a solution to a problem, there are secondary consequences, so often that solution is bad, so you should view things in trade-offs and not as in solutions. As one problem is a new one, so you should see which one is worse and how to mitigate them, but you cannot completely destroy all problems according to the constrained vision. While the unconstrained vision views things as solutions and that you can contain things and that you do not necessarily create consequences that are bad when you try to fix the problem. And the constrained vision much more believes that people are self-interested and that you have to incentivize them to do certain things, while the constrained vision doesn't really like the concept of incentives. So most importantly, in the unconstrained vision, intentions of people should be to help others. So the constrained vision, you could say, looks at the situation, while the unconstrained looks at the morality of it. The 3rd chapter is on knowledge and reason. People with the constrained vision argue that knowledge is evolving. You gain it through experience, so it's generational, it adds up. While those with the unconstrained vision kind of view it as individual, that you have 2 types of people basically. The moral intellectual types who have a lot of superior knowledge, thus should guide society, while you have the inferior one, most people, who don't have that much knowledge. But the constrained vision instead views things as people have specific knowledge in specific fields. So some people are superior in their knowledge on specific things. So just because a doctor is superior in medical things doesn't mean he's superior in law, for example. So you have specialization clearly of superiority in the constrained vision, while in general there's a sense of superiority in the unconstrained vision. On the constrained side, you also have systemic process, so that's where you get knowledge and reason, while knowledge and reason in the unconstrained vision comes from articulated rationality. And you maybe notice that the unconstrained vision is a little bit elitist, how it views things. Thomas Sowell never calls that out really, and he's quite objective here, but me personally, I want to point out the unconstrained vision is a little elitist, while the constrained vision doesn't really have a sense of superiority against the normal people. And then basically you can view knowledge as dispersed among the constrained vision and among cultivated minds in the unconstrained vision. Since you have this thing with experience on the constrained vision, they believe that you become wiser and have more knowledge and reason with age. While the unconstrained vision, well, you can kind of indoctrinate the youth with certain values, so then they may be better than the old. You can see different dynamics here between the youth and the old, where The unconstrained vision prefers the youth, while the constrained vision prefers the old. The fourth chapter is on social processes, as the constrained vision believes that the social processes are naturally evolving. It's a natural order of things in a sense, while the unconstrained visions view them often by design, and you have to do something to rectify them when they are bad. The constrained vision, because it believes in the limited rationality of man to control everything, there are intrinsic difficulties in doing so. When you oppose that, for the unconstrained vision, that's obstruction of pursuing the greater good. So if you are against obstruction, then you may believe in bigger government, and if you believe there are intrinsic difficulties, you may be more in favor of limited government. And these intrinsic difficulties can be viewed when you read about economics from the right, while this obstruction thing can be viewed maybe in economics from the left, actually. And the unconstrained vision doesn't believe that you should have so much limitation of power, because then you have missed opportunities, while the constrained vision believes it's important and that you need social rules. And one must understand, when talking about freedom, justice, and equality, the constrained and unconstrained vision mean different things. The unconstrained vision really emphasizes the importance of results, so how things end up, while the constrained vision, to solve some problems, they believe in incentives, and they believe it's much more important to have a fair process than so-called fair results. The fifth part talks about varieties and dynamics, so you have the different types of ideologies. As I said previously, not all ideologies fit neatly into the constrained or unconstrained vision, nor all philosophers. And he talks a lot about different philosophers, so he brings up Goodwin and Hayek and John Stuart Mill and Adam Smith. And some people don't fit into either one, some fit into one, although their ideas are usually found in the other. And you have also hybrid ideologies. So for example, Marxism believes that historically things are constrained by the system. So feudalism, for example, that's a constrained system. Why they believe that when you become communist, then you can have an unconstrained vision. While utilitarianism, they have an unconstrained goal, but they believe to use constrained means to achieve it. Fascism isn't really constrained or unconstrained. It takes some things from constrained and unconstrained visions, but it's more superficial than in practice, actually. And that's the patterns part. Second part is applications, and here he discusses much more the applications of these things, although he kind of did that in patterns. So the first thing is on equality, and the constrained vision wants equality of processes, while the unconstrained vision wants equality of outcome or of results. And the thing is, with equality of process, for the unconstrained vision, the problem is then you get economic power forming, while when you try to achieve equality of result, then you get political power forming. So to achieve equality of results, the constrained vision argues, you need to have political power, which is dangerous, while when you have the formation of equality of process, the unconstrained vision argues that this is not really equality and not all are equal, and that you have some economic powers from some that is used on others. And the constrained vision believes it's irrelevant to try to achieve equality of results. It's not a problem, they believe. You don't need to do that. When you want to try to do something, of course, you need to use incentives, while the people with the unconstrained visions have more clearly goals. They don't really think about the incentives formed. So they have a goal without really thinking of the real consequences of the thing that may turn out. So here you have kind of an intention swings versus reality, actually. And here again, he kind of talks about the distinguishment in the unconstrained vision between the current intelligence and the potential intelligence. So you have the moral intellectual class, who have the potential knowledge now, versus the masses who have the current intelligence. Thus, the unconstrained vision believes that the moral intellectual class deserves to have power over the majority, even if the majority opposes it. So here you can find the justification, for example, for judicial activism or bureaucrats acting in certain ways, while the constrained vision believes that people have similar capabilities, it's just that they may specialize in different things. The second chapter in the second part is on power. There's a interesting difference view of war here. So the constrained vision views war as rational. So people may act in selfish ways, as may nations. So that is why they may go to war. To prevent that, you need to build up a military and have allies to make sure that you're not screwed over. While the unconstrained vision believes that war is just a bunch of misunderstandings and that you should have disarmament, and that war also is caused by bad people. So they believe in this thing called localized evil. With crime, the goal of the constrained vision, they see that crime is natural, it's natural in human nature for some people, so you need a severe punishment to deter it. While in the unconstrained vision, it believes that it's based on how society has treated someone. So we need to put on kid gloves and put them into a rehabilitation, even if some people cannot be rehabilitated. And keep in mind, this is discussed on people who are rapists, for example, or murderers. So it's not just petty crimes, it's some horrible crimes. And Thomas Sowell talks about the locus of power, and those with a constrained vision believes it has to be decentralized, so in the hands of individuals, and that they are free to choose how they act, while the unconstrained vision believes it should be concentrated in a small group of individuals who make rules for everyone else to direct society in how it should be. And when dealing with the development of the third world, there are different assumptions. So this assumption that people have similar capabilities on the constrained vision, well, that means that if you remove government regulations and institute the rule of law and things like that, then you can develop a society, while the unconstrained vision views that there is an inequality in knowledge, so you need to equalize things to develop it. So you need equality of results to develop a society according to the unconstrained vision, and you need equality of processes according to constrained vision to develop a society. The third chapter in the second part is justice, and here you can see a difference between why does a society exist or why does the law exist. So in the constrained vision, justice exists to preserve a society, while in the unconstrained vision, society exists to create justice. Here again you see that in the sense of justice, there is a belief in the rule of law, much more in the constrained vision, so equal rules that apply to everyone, and that you do not make exceptions, and that you read the law to the letter, while the unconstrained vision tends to individualize things and think, well, yeah, but what was this person's circumstances? Why did they act? So if a rich person stole a loaf of bread and if a poor person stole a loaf of bread, do they get the same punishment? In crude terms, according to the constrained vision, yes. In the unconstrained vision, no. Also, to rectify problems, the unconstrained vision believes in social justice. So create equality of results, no matter what. It's not important why you have inequalities of results because of merit or value or upbringing, while the constrained vision believes that, yeah, inequalities may be natural, they're not necessarily good, as the unconstrained vision likes to sometimes call the constrained vision as dishonest, or they believe this because they're paid. The constrained vision don't really care, they just view things and say you're wrong, and that you should not try to rectify this thing with inequality of results because it's not necessarily a problem or it's impossible to rectify. So basically, to sum up what justice is in the constrained vision, it is people are free to act as long as they follow the framework of general rules, while in the unconstrained they believe the government should maximize the freedom of individuals as much as possible, even if it may infringe on other freedoms. So people have certain rights. So for example, with property rights, they are usually prioritized in the constrained vision because it's important for the functioning of a society. If you have a trespasser who puts up a leaflet there, the unconstrained vision will say, yeah, but it's really important to have freedom of speech, no matter what, no matter if it violates property rights. Here we are increasing rights of one person at the expense of another type of right. And the final chapter discusses values and paradigms and summarizes everything else. So Thomas Sowell states that paradigms are based on evidence in a sense, so you could say that visions plus the evidence presented combine to make a paradigm. And that when people speak of value premises, it's actually that people are thinking of the causation of certain things. If they believe that the inherent cost of making a society better is liberty, then it's not a value premise. Same thing if they believe that to make a society better you need equality. It's not a value premise, it's more of thinking of how things work. So a vision in a sense. And this, the unconstrained vision likes to accuse the constrained vision of often. Actually, special interests, yeah, they may be self-interested and they may adopt a vision, but that is just to make allies with people who already have that vision. But you don't necessarily adapt a vision for your own bias or for your own benefit. So if you look at people historically where they work at and then which ideology they have, often people who have the unconstrained vision are rich, which is against their self-interest, while those with the constrained vision, they are often academics, which is against their self-interest. It's against the self-interest of an academic to advocate the constrained vision. It's against the interest of a rich person to advocate the unconstrained vision. This is simplifying things, but it's just to show that an intellectual part of the constrained or unconstrained vision isn't doing that out of personal self-interest necessarily. And then he points out that people aren't stuck to these ideologies necessarily, they can change. So people may change their ideas over time, they may reformulate them so that they are open for some new facts, but the idea may change so much that it basically becomes meaningless. Or people may change suddenly their view of the world. So for example, during the Great Depression, you may change entirely your view on the world because you want food on the table now. So you have to question everything you believed previously. And that's the content of the book. So, how would I rate A Conflict of Visions? I would give it a 10 out of 10. This is Thomas Sowell's best book I've read so far. It's entirely objective compared to previous ones. The previous ones, I think, make really good arguments, are great books, but you can still see his bias clearly, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but they aren't really perfect books. Here, there's nothing you can object to. He doesn't really take opinions. He may explain certain things, how they work, but he's not taking the side of the constrained or the unconstrained vision. Although, by the way, Thomas Sowell is clearly someone of the constrained vision, as am I mostly. But he doesn't take sides, and it is a good summary of modern philosophy and modern ideology. So the origins of the sides of economics and of the law and of justice and of power, these views originate in the constrained or unconstrained vision, although never said explicitly. If you want a good introduction to philosophy, you should read A Conflict of Visions. It states, after all, ideological origins of political struggles. And it is correct. So yeah, 10 out of 10. Thomas Sowell, as always, a great author. And this time an amazing author, actually. So amazing book, 10 out of 10. Definitely read it. So this was the avid reader's review of A Conflict of Visions, Ideological Origins of Political Struggles, written by Thomas Sowell in 1987. I hope you readers enjoyed this book review, and I hope I see you readers next time. Read this book if you're interested in philosophy.